Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 12th day of April, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. We've got a couple of four areas with advisories out for the Arctic coast, or western Arctic coast. Winter weather advisory for blowing snow ends at 7 p.m. there, and that's for some gusty winds and some areas of blowing snow, reducing visibilities there. Same sort of thing going on there for the eastern North Slope, eastern Brooks Range area there. Not the worst advisory you could ever see going on looking at the conditions up there, but areas of gusty winds and blowing snow up in that area. And again, that ends at 7 p.m. as well, so just a couple more hours there. And for the eastern Alaska Range, that's a wind advisory for winds gusting possibly as high as 45 miles an hour out of the southeast through the mountain passes there west of the toe cutoff in the eastern Alaska Range, and that ends at 7 p.m. Also, Delta Junction seeing gusts 30 to 40 miles an hour this afternoon with temperatures in the lower 40s to go along with those winds. Otherwise, that's it for the watches, warnings, and advisories around the state. You can see frontal boundary and a lot of clouds there over the eastern Gulf of Alaska extending southward to off the picture. And that brought a fair amount of precipitation up to the North Gulf Coast today from the southern Kenai Peninsula, where about, about 2/10 of an inch fell at Port Graham of rain, and maybe 1/10 of an inch at Seward, but that increases you head east. Cordova picked up about half an inch of precipitation. These are 12-hour amounts ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Yakutat had the heaviest amount, 3/4 of an inch. A lot of that fell as snow earlier on, but that's definitely falling as rain and ending this afternoon. Still raining though there, and northern Panhandle seeing some precipitation about, Sitka only 1/10 of an inch. None fell over the southern Panhandle. You can see some clearing skies down toward Dixon Entrance. Juneau picked up about 1/4 of an inch of precipitation as well, and winds maybe gusting 25, 30 miles an hour at most there. Southerly winds, Copper River Basin gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour this afternoon. Also for Palmer, Anchorage International Airport this afternoon had southeast winds gusting to 35 miles an hour, and that helped the temperature to soar to 41 degrees, which can't remember how long it's been since we saw temperatures in the 40s, but starting to feel a little more like April now, with the temperatures at least getting into the lower 40s this afternoon. And some areas of the Kenai Peninsula were up around 50 degrees. In some clearing showing up now, southern Cook Inlet and over the peninsula there. And so any downsloping area with some sunshine easily rose up toward 50 degrees there over the Kenai Peninsula. Otherwise, the interior just variably cloudy to mostly cloudy with precipitation, light amounts. Some of you saw a little more over the western interior with a low pressure over the northern Bering Sea there. That brought east winds of 20 to, east-southeast 23 miles an hour at Nome. They picked about 1.5 inches of snow today, but the temperature this afternoon up to 34 degrees. And also gusty winds to 40 miles an hour out of the east at Kotzebue. And Red Dog Dock also seeing gusts of 40 miles an hour, temperatures in the upper 20s there, and much lighter precipitation amounts up that way, with areas of rain and snow, depending on your elevation, time of day, and latitude here. All across the western interior, to a lesser extent over the southern part of the state. Heaviest, though, as I mentioned, from southern Kenai Peninsula eastward into the North Gulf the northern Panhandle, mostly along the coast there, over the northern Panhandle, and then just about nothing falling to the south, tapering off. Not much north of the Alaska Range with the down-sloping winds off the range there, keeping it dry over the upper Tanana Valley. 40-mile country, and then lots of showers of rain or snow again out over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea, with weak system there over the Alaska Peninsula. Looking at the forecast for tonight, we'll see that front still off the coast there of the Panhandle with a very weak low. The whole system now very weak, so periods of rain making it south, possibly to western Dixon Entrance, covering most of Prince of Wales Island. Should see some rain before morning. But off to the east, there's probably staying dry throughout the entire night, and then periods of rain shouldn't be too heavy, possibly mixed with snow up north of Haines towards Skagway, but not looking for any accumulations. And rain along the North Gulf Coast continues, becoming more showery for the Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak Island. Isolated scattered rain and snow showers, mostly along the western Alaska Range. Dry over the northeast interior, central interior, dry also. Arctic coast north slope, dry. Scattered snow showers back toward the Noatak Valley into the Selawik Valley there, and then on down toward the Yukon River near the Nulato Hills. And some snow showers continue at times tonight, or light snow with lighter winds for the Nome area on the southern Seward Peninsula, and scattered rain and snow showers along the southwest coast, as well as the Pribilof Islands. A little bit more potent low there brings rain to the central Aleutians, periods of rain, but the winds, looks like the strongest winds will be off to the south and southwest of the Aleutians, and then that whole system dives off to the southeast there, leaving some light rain and snow behind from Atka Island to Unmak Island, up to just clipping the Pribilof Islands. Either side of that batch of moisture, it'll be variably cloudy with some clearing. Western Bering Sea, central western Aleutians, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, up to near St. Lawrence Island. Trough keeps rain and snow showers in the forecast for the western interior, mostly falling in the form of snow over the northwest interior, but those amounts will be quite light. And isolated showers along the Alaska Range, scattered showers for the North Gulf Coast, with that trough hung up there along the coastline into the northern panhandle. And eastern interior, actually from the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley, right on up to the North Slope, Arctic coast as well, mostly sunny, with lighter winds, light winds, so not a bad day up there, pretty good day. And increasing rain with that warm front for the southern panhandle along the south coast tomorrow afternoon. Winds starting to come up, not so much for the panhandle, starting to come up for Kodiak Island, a little closer to the tighter gradient associated with that 988 millibar low off to your southeast. And rain will be increasing in the afternoon late there as well, kind of replacing the scattered showers will develop into a light rain pattern in the afternoon as that low begins to affect the area there. And then moving ahead to the outlook for Wednesday, that low first center moves right northward there, right across Kodiak overnight Tuesday night, and early Wednesday another one develops and moves right over Fognak Island, 1,002 millibars, so definitely weaker, and pretty gusty winds will accompany that system for the mountain passes, turning an arm of south central Alaska, with possible gusts. Could see gusts to 60 miles an hour to the southeast there for the Chugach Mountains, maybe the upper hillside of Anchorage. Depends on exactly where those low centers track in relation to the front, but shouldn't be anything stronger than that, but definitely an increase in the winds, and temperatures staying on the mild side for periods of rain or showers away from the downslope areas or on the upslope areas. And some light rain sliding eastward into the panhandle with that weakening front. Otherwise, just lighter precipitation, kind of the whole precipitation field breaks up as it crosses the Alaska Range there into the eastern interior. Amounts will be light in the form of rain or snow showers. And that'll extend back to the west there along the Yukon River down into the southwest interior. Rain and snow showers there for the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, maybe some light snow, fog for the Pribilofs if it's cold enough. And St. Lawrence Island, a few flurries or light snow showers there. North winds, maybe 25 knots there for the marine areas. And rain with that warm front lifts north of the Aleutians, so you're not looking bad there for the western, even the central Aleutians on Wednesday, with partly mostly sunny skies and light winds. And for the lows tonight over the Panhandle, mid to upper 30s to near 40 in the south, North Gulf Coast in the 30s. Lower to mid-30s south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, upper 20s to Sitna Valley, Copper River Basin, mid-30s Kodiak Island, lower 40s for Bristol Bay. Farther up to the north, looking at Tanana Valley, Yukon Valley, 15 to 20 or 23 degrees. Mid to upper 20s Kuskokwim Valley on up in toward the Galena area, Ambler, Kobuk Valley, low in the mid-20s. And still below zero for the North Slope, a little below, 0 to 5 below for your lows Arctic coast. And in the 20s for the Seward Peninsula, upper teens St. Lawrence Island. And for the Tuesday morning lows, mid-20s for the Pribilofs, lower 30s for the Aleutians. And then the highs tomorrow afternoon into the 40s again, much like today, 40 to 45 for Sitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska, near 40 for the Copper River Basin. Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Valley near 40, or actually along the Alaska Range, mid-40s, Nikolai and McGrath, near 50 over the southern Panhandle, 40 towards Skagway. Interior, Tanana Valley, lower to mid-40s tomorrow, and 30s there for the Yukon Flat, or near 40 for the Yukon Flats, teens for the Arctic coast, and upper 20s to mid-30s there for the Seward Peninsula, upper 20s restricted to St. Lawrence Island, in the 30s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Lows the following morning, mid to upper 30s for the Panhandle, lower 30s, or 30 to 35, maybe upper 30s there for Homer and Seward, but otherwise lower 30s, Copper River Basin, Bristol Bay, Tanana Valley in the 20s, single numbers Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast, but it is on the plus side of 0 there, and 20s for the Seward Peninsula. Mid-20s Pribilofs, upper 20s, lower 30s for the Aleutians Alaska Peninsula. And then the highs for Wednesday afternoon, 40 to 45, maybe some areas trying to push toward 50 degrees in the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, definitely into the 50s over the southern Panhandle, and upper 40s for the Tanana Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Tuesday morning, pretty good VFR there for the North Slope and most of the Arctic coast. Conditions worsen as you head west and become IFR there. Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, down to Kivalina, and possibly in the Noatak Valley. Marginal VFR over a good portion of the Brooks Range, and IFR, Bering Strait, and southern Seward Peninsula. Norton Sound, mostly marginal, and central eastern Bering Sea, mostly marginal VFR, but some IFR for Adak and Atka, and also some IFR there, Togiak Bay up into the southwest mountains, into the southern Kuskokwim Valley, and western Cook Inlet, and along the eastern slopes of the Alaska Range, IFR, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and the northern 3/4 or so of the Panhandle. For the afternoon Tuesday, VFR, Arctic Coast, North Slope, Eastern Brooks Range, also mid and upper Yukon Valley to the flats over toward Eagle, and actually from the eastern North Gulf Coast there, right on up to the Arctic Coast, VFR, and then marginal VFR, central and western Alaska Range, south and east of the mountains. Cook Inlet, marginal, Kenai Peninsula, marginal, Kodiak Island, IFR on the eastern portions, and some VFR for the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, much of the Bering Sea looking marginal, with some VFR there out west, and a little bit of IFR, Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, and Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, otherwise not too bad, and marginal for the southeast coast. Marginal VFR Tuesday morning for the Panhandle, northern 2/3 or so, or 3/4 of the Panhandle, the south VFR, IFR right along the north coast there, but up to the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, right up into the Copper River Basin to the Alaska Range. VFR due to downsloping for Cook Inlet, say from Anchor Point right on up to Palmer, into the Manuska Valley and Susitna Valley, IFR over toward the Alaska Range, down into the Aleutian Range. VFR, the entire stretch of the Yukon River till you get out to the coastline there. And marginal for the Bering Sea with some areas of IFR and VFR thrown in. And the eastern half of the Arctic coast, Brooks Range, and North Slope, VFR. Western half, marginal. And for the afternoon, kind of a whole mixture of conditions there with the IFR, sort of in a arc there from the southwest interior, actually from the say the Barren Islands, southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, Lake Iliamna, across the Kuskokwim Valley, and then the Yukon Valley there, right on up the river into the flats, VFR to the north, a little VFR on the downslope areas of the north side of the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin as well, and then mostly IFR for the North Gulf Coast, north coast of the Panhandle, but seeing VFR, southern Panhandle, and a lot of IFR streaming into the western Bering Sea and the Aleutians with the next system. They're pulling a lot of moisture in, but conditions VFR to marginal for the remainder of the area to mostly marginal for the Alaska Peninsula and southeast Bering. Anatuvik, marginal tomorrow. Same forecast for Adigan, but I'll go for slow improvement to VFR in the afternoon throughout the day Tuesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal. Rainy, occasionally marginal. And windy, marginal VFR, if it occurs, will be on the southern entrance into the pass. North side should be VFR. Same forecast for Isabel. And Mentasta, VFR, north and south entrance and through the pass tomorrow. And Tanita looking good with VFR flying. Portage, though, a little more marginal there. Either approach. And Chilkoot and White, starting out IFR with slow improvement to marginal VFR throughout the day into the afternoon. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 to 4,000 feet there, along and right up along the coast of the Panhandle, at the surface, North Gulf Coast inland, and up into the southwest interior, just south of the Pribilof Islands, but north of the Aleutians. Icing, some leftover possible light icing of a mixed variety for the North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle. Then the heavier icing of that next storm staying south of Kodiak Island, but beginning to affect the southern coast of the Panhandle, as well as Kodiak Island late in the day. Jet stream southerlies 125 to 130 knots with that low south of Kodiak Island, turn southwest at about 115 into the North Gulf Coast. And 9,000 feet, south winds strongest still south of the area, light over the interior. And 3,000 feet, again 50 to 55 knot winds with that low south of Kodiak Island, and then north to northwest 20 to 40 knots, Bering Sea to the central Aleutians. Turbulence. Not much, really, with the wind staying out of the forecast area for the most part. Could be some increasing turbulence east side of Kodiak Island to the southern Kenai Peninsula tomorrow afternoon, and light to isolated moderate chop for the Adak-Atka area. For those northerly winds, kind of diminishing from west to east there, but otherwise around the state, not too bad.
So the sun, looking here from the ground, seems very constant and quiet. But actually, when we look at it from space, we can see it's quite turbulent and active. Space weather is activity on the sun and in the near-Earth space that can affect our technological infrastructure and society. The sun is constantly spewing out a stream of particles called the solar wind that goes out into the solar system. And it affects us here near Earth, where we're protected by a magnetic field. The interaction between the solar wind and the magnetic field can cause space weather. The Carrington event is the largest storm we've seen in recorded history when we're looking at space weather. But every solar cycle, which repeats about every 11 years, one estimate estimates that there's a 10% chance of getting a large storm like the Carrington event that could impact us here on Earth. But we see solar storms almost all the time. And these storms have an effect on our technological infrastructure. Solar storms can cause activity in Earth's atmosphere and magnetosphere that can damage electrical power grids that power our communities, interrupt radio and satellite communications, and can cause our GPS navigation to fail. NOAA is working with its international partners to ensure that we have different vantage points where we can observe space weather. Our space weather observing infrastructure from space includes the NOAA Discover satellite and the NASA ACE satellite that are stationed upstream of Earth to give us a first buoy measurement of the solar wind. It also includes the ESA-NASA SOHO satellite and the NASA Stereo satellite that image the sun and also make coronagraph measurements of the outer atmosphere of the sun, the corona, that can tell us when large explosions happen off the sun. We also observe the sun and the Earth's magnetic field from the geostationary location with NOAA's GOES. So the way we use the space weather information from satellites and from the ground is to be able to make forecasts and predictions, just like we do with hurricanes and terrestrial weather. We observe the sun and look for activity and see how it develops, and see if it's going to culminate into a large explosion that can affect us here on Earth. NOAA is working with its international partners to expand our observing capability. We're committed to observing along the Sun-Earth line. So we're going to do the imaging of the sun and the upstream buoy measurements of the solar wind along the Sun-Earth axis. The more we understand about the sun, the more we can prepare for it and become, just like we are a weather-ready nation, become a space weather-ready nation. And as we look forward to humans exploring out into the solar system and advancing our space commerce activities, space weather becomes more and more important.
Here at the Space Weather Prediction Center, we monitor space activity as it's occurring back at the sun, and then we issue out a forecast as well as alerts, watches, and warnings as activity is occurring. A typical space weather event would start with a solar flare back at the sun. That solar flare is short-lived and produces fairly short-lived impacts as well, basically impacting communications on the daylit side of the Earth. However, some solar flares are also associated with a coronal mass ejection, or an eruption of plasma that's blasted off the sun and out into space. As forecasters, it's our job to determine if that cloud of plasma is moving towards Earth, and if it comes towards Earth, what the potential impacts may be. Those impacts can range from a fairly low-level storm that may produce the aurora a little bit farther south than usual, or can range up into fairly significant magnetic disturbances that don't happen very often, but when they do, they can impact technologies and infrastructure here on Earth. We provide information to lots of different user groups, from airlines to the electric power grid, to emergency managers, aviation, satellite community, lots of different customers.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis. Still a little bit of the heavier ice south of the Forelands and Cook Inlet, and a little bit more, of course, north of the Forelands, but the entire area there thinning out, especially with the milder temperatures that have come in now and will continue to do so over the next several days. So look for continued decreasing sea ice concentrations in the inlet, and probably for Bristol Bay as well, and then to a much lesser extent there along the main ice edge, say from Kuskokwim Bay out to all the way across the northern there, just north of St. Matthew Island. Coastal water forecasts: small craft advisories tomorrow for south winds of 25 knots on the south coast, and south to southeast 25 to 30 knots on the north coast, seas 10 to 12 feet. Southeast 15 for Lynn Canal, 3-foot seas. South 15 for Stevens Passage, and southeast 15 for Clarence Strait. And then for Wednesday, light northwest breeze for Clarence Strait at 10 knots, seas pretty slight, and southeast 15 for Stevens Passage. Lynn Canal, southeast 20 knots, 4-foot seas. Light southerlies at 15 with 9-foot seas on the south coast there along the outer coastline, Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, small craft advisories: south winds 25 knots on the central coast, south 30 knots on the north coast, with seas as high as 16 feet. And then for the Prince William Sound zone tomorrow, east winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. North Gulf Coast easterlies at 20 knots with 7 to 8-foot seas. Barren Islands, east 20 knots, seas 7 feet. Kamishak Bay, southeast at 20 with 5-foot seas. North to northeast breeze 15 knots with 2 to 3-foot seas for Cook Inlet. And then small craft advisories for Cook Inlet on Wednesday: north winds at 25 knots with 8-foot seas. Southwest 25 knots for Kamishak Bay, while the Barren Islands up a notch there at 30 knots out of the south, 18-foot seas. And then gale warnings for the western North Gulf Coast: minimum gales there, southerlies at 35 knots with maximum gales on the eastern North Gulf Coast, 45 knots from the southeast, seas near 20 feet. And gale warnings for Prince William Sound, winds expected sustained southeast at 35 knots with 9-foot seas. And Kodiak Island, south winds 15 knots tomorrow, 4 to 7-foot seas. And the Alaska Peninsula, southwest winds 15 knots, 5 to 7-foot seas. Same thing for Bristol Bay, except seas only about 2 feet. And Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southerlies of 15 knots. And for Wednesday, small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula: north to northwesterlies 25 knots, 9 to 11-foot seas. Bristol Bay, northwest at 20 knots, and same thing from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, northwest 20. Small craft advisories there for the east side of Kodiak Island, southerlies to 25 knots with 13-foot seas. On Alaska Island, east-southeast 15 to 20 tomorrow, while Unmak Island looking at small craft advisories, especially over toward Nikolsky for north to northwesterlies 25 to 30 knots. Good gales, Adak and Atka west-northwest at 40, and then northwest winds 40 knots extend out to Amchitka Island. And then for Kiska to Shemya, northwest at 25 with seas at 11 feet. Wednesday, southwest winds 25 knots for the area from Shemya to Kiska Island, and then from Amchitka Island westerlies at 25, and that includes Adak and Atka, also all westerly at 25 knots for the day Wednesday. Northwest 25, mostly for the Fox Island, seas running 9 to 11 feet. Southwest coast, lightest winds will be there along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. Southwest 15, 4-foot seas. West 15 for the Pribilofs with 6-foot seas. Yukon Delta coast south at 20 and southeast 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Moving ahead to Wednesday, north winds 20 knots St. Lawrence Island and northwest winds 20 knots along the southwest coast. Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island small craft advisories northwesterlies will be, we'll have for northwest winds at 25 knots with 6 to 8 foot seas. And pretty uniform winds there all along the Arctic coast tomorrow, with east at 10 knots from Cape Thompson all the way over to Demarcation Point, southeast 15 from Cape Thompson to Wales. And for the outlook on Wednesday, northwest at 20, Wales to Cape Thompson, and then the western Arctic coast northeast at 15, central coast as well as the east side there, looking at east winds at 15 knots. For tonight, again, pretty dry up there along the North Slope Arctic coast, as well as all of the eastern interior, just maybe some isolated, very isolated shower activity there along the Alaska Range. Wind advisory ends though, winds continue to come down under the advisory levels, and periods of rain continue with the front kind of hung up right along the coastline there, but quite weak, just periods of light rain, winds not much of a factor, and rain and snow showers, southwest interior, mostly scattered snow showers over the northwest interior and Seward Peninsula area, and kind of a lot of precipitation of the light variety and mixed variety over the Bering Sea, and rain for the central Aleutians with that system. And for tomorrow, a big storm comes on up into Wednesday into the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.